To Hannity. It is one of the single most obvious examples, talk about Tucker and his groupthink, in American history. You have every single hour of every single day, week in, week out, now year in, year out, your mainstream media has dedicated its coverage to one thing only: maligning the president you elected, his agenda, and everyone who dares to support him. Still, one professional Trump hater over at fake news CNN, Jim Acosta, is positively feigning outrage, shocked that Trump supporters didn't give him a warm welcome at yesterday's rally in Florida. And Acosta's worried that Trump is whipping up hostility against the press. In moments, we're actually going to remind you and Acosta where all the violent rhetoric is really coming from in the country, and it's not President Trump. And also tonight, the president is once again calling out Mueller's political witch hunt. Coming up, we will uncover the special counsel's Russia illusion. We do have the very latest, day 2 of the Paul Manafort 2005 tax case. And stay tuned for a very special mini monologue. Rush Limbaugh, 30 years, groundbreaking conservative talk radio. Here's a preview.
We have a special guest. Who is it?
So, Rush, I just wanted to congratulate you on 30 years. This is your favorite president, and I think you are fantastic.
All right, it really is impossible, and I'm going to speak as a conservative, to imagine the last 30 years without Rush. We're going to have much more on that later in the program. But first, it's time for tonight's breaking news, jam-packed, buckle your seatbelt opening monologue. All right, every night right here on this program, we show you example after example of the abusively biased coverage from the Destroy Trump media. Now, they have been predicting the end of the Trump presidency and that he wouldn't win anyway since the moment he declared his candidacy, went down the escalator in 2015. Now, there have been zero in terms of objectivity, zero fairness, crisis peddling, mixed with a deranged blend of personal insults and anti-Trump bizarre conspiracy theories. It's why we call them the Destroy Trump press. Now, CNN's chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, he has been one of the worst offenders. And the crowds at last night's Trump rally in Tampa, Florida, well, they told him in person what they think of him and his network. Take a look.
The White House has held only 3 briefings for the press this month and 8 total since the end of May. There is no other way to describe what the White House is doing these days. Wolf, top officials, including the president, are hiding from the press. And Wolf, just to give you a sense as to what's happening right now, you can hear there is a chorus of boos and other chants from this Trump crowd here in Tampa, Florida. They're saying things like CNN sucks, go home, and fake news. Wolf, obviously, all of those things are false. We're staying right here. We're going to do our job and report on this rally to all of our viewers here tonight. Wolf.
All right, this is not the first time this happened. And after what you just saw, Jim Acosta shared his fear of Trump supporters, and he tweeted out, quote, "Just a sample of the sad scene we faced at the Trump rally in Tampa. I am very worried that the hostility whipped up by Trump and some in conservative media will result in somebody getting hurt. We should not treat our fellow Americans this way. The press is not the enemy." Jim, I'm a pretty prominent conservative in the country. Let me say this clearly and loudly. I want every journalist in this country, everyone, I don't care who you work for, to be safe. And I'll tell you right now, I will be the first person to come to your defense if I'm there and anyone ever dares lay a hand on you. If I was standing there, if I see it happen, I will be the first person to jump in and fight on your behalf. Physical violence is never acceptable to me, nor is it acceptable to the conservatives I know and respect. And let me also be clear. If you're a conservative, and by the way, you ever threaten anyone, you're not a friend of mine, you're not a friend of this program. And by the way, or the conservative movement of which I'm just a small part of. And with that said, many people's memories, though, are really short. Remember Obama talked about getting in people's faces? Remember he said some guy named Mr. Burgess, we're going to send him to Sean Hannity so he can tear him up? Remember more recently we saw what happened to Sarah Sanders and her family thrown out of a restaurant? They followed her family to the next restaurant. Remember what happened to Pam Bondi and Secretary Nielsen? Well, let's go down memory lane.
I was asked to leave a restaurant this weekend where I attempted to have dinner with my family. My husband and I politely left and went home. I was asked to leave because I work for President Trump.
3 huge guys came up and started probably an inch from my face, screaming at me every word in the book, cursing as loud as they could.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirsten Nielsen is in a Mexican restaurant of all places. Gold. Shame on you! Shame! Shame! Shame!
Why are you separating families?
Why did you leave my husband alone?
I'm not trying to disrespect you, but why is he separating families?
He's not.
I'm not trying to disrespect.
Now, Jim, I have a question. Did you ever pick up the phone? Did you call Sarah Sanders? Did you call Pam Bondi, the Secretary of State in Florida? Did you call Secretary Nielsen after they were run out of places publicly in a violent, what looked like could become a violent situation? If you did, by the way, good for you. On this program, we call out bias. We will do so as long as I'm allowed the honor to be here every night. We show the clips of the media, their very worst moments. We tell our viewers to turn the channel if they don't like our coverage, but we don't support boycotts. We don't demand firings. We don't support violence of any kind, nor will we ever. That's not inciting violence by giving an honest critique. It's called telling the truth. And just because people chant fake news doesn't mean they would support any kind of violence in any way. And of course, there's plenty of bad rhetoric on a lot of sides of the aisle. Your network in particular, others in the mainstream media, you're not exactly telling the full story about things to the American people. And I see abuse of bias every single day. You largely ignored the nasty rhetoric against Melania Trump. Many glossed over the scary rhetoric about Ivanka Trump, the president's young son, Barron, even his 4-year-old granddaughter, the president's granddaughter. And you totally seem to have forgotten the overwhelming amount of violent rhetoric against President Trump himself. What did you say during these moments? Take a look.
And with this kind of inspiration, I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? I want to clarify, I'm not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it's been a while. And maybe it's time.
How dare he say the things he does? Of course I want to punch him in the face.
Right. The press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym. That's what I wish.
So where's the fear, the worry, the concern about all of this rhetoric against the president? Now, do you think what you just saw is a little bit worse than being heckled at a rally? Because I do. But there's plenty of more examples of these crisis peddlers in the news media today doing whatever they can do every minute, hour, second of every day to discredit President Trump and his supporters. Now, the media in this country, they cannot stand the president's common sense conservative agenda. They can't stand that he's actually keeping his promises. They clearly don't like the Trump tax cuts because that means it's, well, less of an opportunity for Democrats to get power back. His peace through strength policies with North Korea, Iran, and elsewhere seems to scare them, ending the horrible Iranian deal. Well, no, this president's not bringing piles and cargo planes of cash and other currencies and giving it to mullahs in Iran that threaten to destroy us, and also negotiating with foreign countries. Well, he's trying to get better trade deals. He gets criticized for that. Obviously, the success is not something that's reported on often. And by the way, it seems that many in this country want this president to fail because if he fails, then that means Democrats can get back in power. I even think if President Trump cured cancer at this point, many in the media, many on the left would still hate him. It's a prime reason why the media is so obsessed with Mueller's partisan witch hunt. They want to see this president impeached. They have been trying to attack his credibility since he's been elected. Earlier today, the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, called for Mueller to finally begin to wrap this up. Watch this.
We believe that the investigation should be brought to a close. We think they're at the end of it. They should render their report, put up, I guess through a playing poker, we're not. Put up or shut up. What do you got? We have every reason to believe they don't have anything. The president did anything wrong. Whether they have any evidence of anything wrong.
And today on Twitter, the president himself called on the Attorney General Jeff Sessions to end this investigation. He tweeted out, quote, "This is a terrible situation. The Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further." Bob Mueller is totally conflicted, and his 17 angry Democrats that are doing his dirty work are a disgrace to the U.S. And then the president continued, Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, one of the most unsuccessful in history, is a total hoax. The Democrats, they actually paid for the phony, discredited dossier, which was, along with Comey, McCabe, Strzok, and his lover, the lovely Lisa Page, used to begin the witch hunt. Very disgraceful. And by the way, the dossier had phony lies, and FISA judges were lied to. Now, if you can believe it, many in the media, they're now saying President Trump actually obstructed justice because he tweeted out his opposition to all that has happened with no evidence and criticizing what is a witch hunt. In other words, telling the truth. Take a look.
He's basically sort of delegitimizing our system of government.
Maybe this is the beginning of a new Saturday night massacre, and one has to wonder whether Mr. Trump is feeling the pressure of the Manafort trial.
It looks like he may very well have obstructed justice in this particular case. That's why I find it particularly ironic that he seems to be, continuing to try to obstruct and end this case so publicly.
They're starting to feel the collusion investigation closing in a little bit more. We're getting Donald Trump's most overt and obstructionist tweets to date. It's not a surprise.
Just around this little incident will be a strong mini case of obstruction.
Crisis to crisis, feigned, phony, moral outrage every second. Just another example of what is groupthink in action. And it's the same reason the mainstream media has been telling you that the trial of Paul Manafort on a 2005 tax case is the trial of the century. And of course, it is anything but. Manafort worked for then candidate Trump, I think, less than 100 days. The charges that Manafort is now facing have nothing to do with Trump. Nothing. Nothing to do with the campaign. Zero. Nothing to do with Russia. Zero. Nothing about collusion. Still, Manafort is facing serious time in prison if convicted. And the success rate, by the way, for federal cases is really high, 95, 98%. That means this is an uphill battle when the full force of the federal government is going after any American, in this case, Paul Manafort. The judge overseeing the trial, T.S. Ellis III, he's not cutting the Mueller team any slack. And before Manafort's proceeding even started, he accused Mueller and his team. Imagine a judge saying this to the special counsel. This isn't about Paul Manafort. This isn't about a tax case. You want to tighten the screws on Paul Manafort. You want to make him sing and provide dirt against President Trump, or compose, meaning what do I need to say to get out of trouble so you can prosecute or impeach Donald Trump. This case is about a 2005 tax case. Nothing to do with Trump, nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with collusion. And the only reason there's all of this media coverage is because he worked for then candidate Trump for less than 100 days. And according to accounts from inside the courtroom, Judge Ellis even interrupted Mueller's team of prosecutors in their opening statement because Paul Manafort made money in his life and was living a lavish lifestyle, telling the jury it's not a crime to be rich in America and telling them to move on. The judge also chastising the prosecution over the word oligarch. And now one more blow for the special counsel, their star witness, Rick Gates. Well, they're saying he may not testify now. By the way, what did they offer Gates? I said last night, Sammy the Bull Gravano kills 19 people, doesn't spend a day in jail because they use him to testify against what? John Gotti Sr.? And then they get him a home and the witness protection program in Arizona. Are we not beginning to have a problem with the way they work this system? I have no idea what Paul Manafort did or didn't do in 2005 to 2007. I didn't know him. But I do know that this trial is only happening because Robert Mueller is desperate to get President Trump. He wanted Manafort to sing or compose. He's desperate to find something, anything on the president. It doesn't matter, it seems, what toll this is all taking on our country. And you talk about language, you talk about the feeling of threats. Jim Acosta, you're not the only one. I had a president of the United States not that long ago telling somebody to, first get in people's faces, and then he's going to send somebody to tear me up. Did President Trump ever say this about you?
I'll put Mr. Burgess up against Sean Hannity. He'll tear him up. I need you to go out and talk to your friends and talk to your neighbors. I want you to talk to them whether they're independent or whether they are Republican. I want you to argue with them and get in their face.
Yeah, get in their face. That bit worse than chanting fake news? Tear up Sean Hannity? What about what Maxine Waters said? Follow him into the grocery store, wherever she said to follow people, or Cory Booker. Joining us now, author of Why We Fight, Fox News national security strategist, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, author of the brand new book, a bestseller, The Briefing, Politics, Press, and the People, former White House press secretary, had the worst job in America. Now Sarah Sanders sadly has it. Why anybody wants that job, to deal with these people every day, is beyond me. Congrats, Sean, on the book. Their memories are short, because what happened to Pam Bondi and Secretary Nielsen, what happened to Sarah Sanders, is recent. The things that have been said about the president's son are fairly recent, and his granddaughter are recent. The things said about Melania, Ivanka, and so many others that are close to the first family. I don't remember Jim Acosta as the great champion standing up for the first family or calling them. I'd love to know if he ever called them and said, "I'm so sorry what you've been through."
Well, Sean, look, I'm on a book tour right now, and they love playing clips about me getting heckled and intimidated. They think it's funny and amusing. So, look, I would associate my comments with your opening monologue. We have a country that allows people to express themselves freely, and that's what makes our country great. But at the same time, I agree with you. We need a free and fair press that is robust, but it should never, ever be under attack with intimidation or violence. If Jim Acosta has a problem with some of the ability of people to express themselves, he should look at his own unprofessional and disrespectful behavior, look in the mirror, and wonder whether he's part of the problem. We should never be threatening anybody with violence. But it's interesting how he's only concerned with himself and his colleagues, as opposed to the violence that has come against the right, people like myself, Sarah, Secretary Nielsen, and others. I want to go out there and have a book to talk about, to exchange ideas with people, and have a civil debate. And they don't seem to worry about that sort of intimidation and that sort of disruption. It's only when it affects him.
Did Jim Acosta ever call you about the heckling that you received?
No, he was part of it. I mean, his unprofessional and disrespectful behavior is part of the problem. The way he treated the president the other day in that Rose Garden was disgraceful. He owes the president an apology. It is not his question that he is entitled to. It is the president's to give it to him. And as much as people may not like some of the...
This is important, because I've had the same experience, and every conservative I know has had the same experience. I don't come on TV and whine that I've been heckled, or people have tried to physically get to me, or that my life's been threatened, and that I've had people, literally threaten my life. It's happened more often than I care to exist. It's wrong. I think it's right. But it's not the same as chanting fake news and CNN sucks. And people have a right to freedom of speech, whether it's against Sean or me or Dr. Gorka. I'm sure you've experienced it as well.
Oh, have I ever, Sean? I have to give my colleague Sean all the recognition. He was on the front line in the podium, but I was in the press briefing room. I'd sneak in, and from the back I'd watch. And Sean, Jim Acosta thinks it's his briefing room. I mean, he really thinks it's the Jim Acosta show. And it's not. It's the White House briefing room. He's got it backwards. Two metrics, just two metrics for both of you and for the viewers. Go back 20 years. Go back 40 years. And find for me when the White House press corps salivated over a Republican president. You won't find it. Listen, you won't find the hagiography.
We'll take it a step further. And I said this, and I'll go back and pull the tape, many, many times when Barack Obama was president. We must keep our politicians safe. And I'm telling, look, we're the highest rated show in cable thanks to this audience. If I am there, I will be the first person in to defend anybody in the press if anyone would dare to lay a hand on them. But chanting "you suck" is not the same as violence. People have a right to speak in this country.
It's not just the press. It's any American. No American should feel threatened to share their voice and their opinion. No American.
We give you the last word, Dr. Gorka.
but Republican politicians have never said harass the other party, get in their faces. It's only the left, it's only the Democrats, and they need to get a grip on their party before things get worse, Sean.
Well, I challenge Jim to maybe talk to those people that threw poor Sarah Sanders out of a restaurant, and Pam Mondi and Secretary Nielsen, and he did have somebody that worked at his network that had a severed head. I know she got fired, of the president that his 12-year-old son saw. So let's start with ourselves. Anyway, when we come back, we got a lot of breaking news tonight. Big news out of the White House about the back and forth between the Trumps, the president's legal team, Robert Mueller. Joe DeGenova is on fire. He's next, straight ahead. There's been a lot of back and forth today about Robert Mueller wanting to interview President Trump. Here with the very latest from the White House is our own Kristen Fisher. Kristen, what's going on?
Well, Sean, for months, one of the biggest questions has been, will President Trump agree to sit down with the special counsel? We know that he's wanted to, but that his legal team has been advising him against it. And now tonight, there is even more reason for his legal team to advise him against it, because Robert Mueller is refusing to accept one of their key demands: to limit questioning during their face-to-face interview to matters of collusion. Mueller wants to open it up to obstruction of justice, among some other topics. Now, earlier in the day, the president described the ongoing investigation as a, quote, terrible situation, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now. Well, Democrats like Adam Schiff say the statement was an attempt to obstruct justice, hiding in plain sight. But the White House says that the president wasn't ordering his attorney general to do anything.
The president is stating his opinion. He's stating it clearly, and he's certainly expressing the frustration that he has with the level of corruption that we've seen from people like Jim Comey, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe.
Now, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is telling Fox News that his inclination is still to say no to an interview, but that President Trump wants him to continue talking to the special counsel. So, Sean, tonight the negotiations about this potential interview with the special counsel continue. Sean.
All right, Kristen at the White House tonight. Thank you. Joining us now with reaction, he is a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGenova. Quick note, he has done legal work for me. He showed up at my Christmas party and he drank way too much. And I paid for the drinks. Anyway, good to see you, my friend. I am very skeptical of any concession to this team of prosecutors that Robert Mueller has put together, looking at what Judge Ellis said about what they're really doing in the Manafort case. I don't trust them.
Well, there's no question that the Mueller investigation is illegitimate in the sense that Rod Rosenstein should have never appointed Mueller, who had a conflict of interest. He was interviewed for the FBI director, and the next day he was appointed special counsel. Rod Rosenstein is either a witness or a co-conspirator in the case. If there's an obstruction because of the firing of James Comey, Rosenstein should have never made the appointment. He shouldn't be involved. He approved one of the FISA warrants. And more to come on that in the next few weeks, by the way. But here's the point. The president should not be interviewed by these people. His attorneys should obviously, and I know they will, do everything they can to advise him not to do an interview. This is an illegitimate investigation. It's a perjury trap, even though the president cannot be indicted for anything. The problem is this is an effort to use the grand jury process for impeachment purposes. That is an unconstitutional use of the grand jury, and they should fight it. If the president refuses to testify, and if Bob Mueller issues a subpoena, the president will win in the Supreme Court. It's unacceptable to allow the president to waste his time and to play into this phony game that Mueller is playing. It's outrageous.
Under any circumstances, Joe, would you, and the president has very good attorneys. We're both mutual friends of Jay Sekulow.
Great attorneys. Great attorneys.
Emmett Flood is a rock star. Giuliani, we know what Rudy Giuliani is as a lawyer, what he was like as a prosecutor. He took down some of the toughest people in New York, in the Southern District of New York. The question is, I agree it's illegitimate. By the way, look at Manafort. Would Paul Manafort be on trial today if he didn't work for Trump for 100 days on a 2005 tax case, nothing to do with Russia? Why isn't Hillary indicted by this time when we know she committed numerous felonies.
Well, Sean, you know what? One of the great lessons from this entire affair is that there are two standards of justice now in the United States, and they're both being applied by the FBI and the DOJ. If you're a Democrat, you get a pass. If you're a Republican, you don't.
Do we have to accept that?
Do
we have to accept that?
No, we do not. I never thought I would hear myself say those words, but I have never been more disgusted with my alma mater, the Department of Justice under Rod Rosenstein, and the FBI under Chris Wray, two incompetent, empty suits who care about one thing, their own future, their next job. And what they have done to put this country through, Rod Rosenstein has put this country through over the last 18 months, may he rot in hell for it. It's disgusting. And what you just said, that they can sit there with a straight face and say that there's no reason to reopen the Hillary case, as Jeff Sessions has said, is absolutely ludicrous and incompetent.
You have said on this program that before. You've used the term dirty cop. I have this instinctive recoil for one reason. I had a family full of cops, and my mom was a prison guard, and my dad was a family court probation guy, and the two people that reached deity were in the FBI. This is not rank and file.
The street guys,
this is a dangerous chapter in our history.
The street guys and gals are great. It's the rot is from the head of the fish in DOJ and FBI.
All right, Joe DeGenova, thank you. When we come back, the king of talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, this very day, literally started radio syndication on the airwaves. I have a mini monologue coming up, and I want to explain what would life have been like for this country without Rush on the air for 30 years. We'll explain straight ahead. All right, 30 years ago today, Americans had few options for political commentary. The news of the day, journalism was decidedly one-sided. Network news, along with the print media, they were the kings of all information in America. That all changed 30 years ago, this day, 1988. It changed forever. A man from a small town called Cape Girardeau, Missouri, kicked off a brand new national radio program. It gave a voice to the millions of conservatives in this country that have been ignored, impugned, their values diminished for so long. In doing so, he started what would now become a new media revolution in this country, one that radically would permanently alter the media landscape in America, and by the way, pave the way for people like me, the great one Mark Levin, Laura Ingraham, and so many others. Well, tonight we're celebrating 30 years of the Rush Limbaugh Show, the pioneer of conservative talk radio. That's tonight's mini monologue. 30 years ago today, August 1st, 1988, the Rush Limbaugh Show kicked off nationally on 56 radio stations around the country. The show was radically different from anything else on the airwaves at the time. Now, for decades, all Americans, look, we were force-fed. We got our information, commentary, news from the decidedly one-sided, left-wing leaning, traditional mainstream media, but with a very clear, funny, fun, refreshing, informative, conservative perspective. Well, Rush filled what was a desperately needed void in the country, and he gave voice to millions of us. Now, Rush is syndicated nationally on more than 600 of America's best radio stations, heard by more than 27 million people every week. And as it turns out, well, time flies when you're kind of like spearheading an entire movement and an entire new genre of media. Take a look.
They said, well, what are you best at? And I said, probably being on the radio. Well, there's your answer. Do what you're best at, and you'll at least be happy, regardless how well you do it. So I decided to give radio one more chance. I'm sure you've all felt like you weren't going to ever amount to anything, even though you knew you were capable of it. I felt that way. The only difference between you and me is that I'm up here and you're out there. And the only reason I'm up here is because you're out there. You have rejuvenated my life, and you have made me something I never even thought I could be. And I have just one thing to say to you, a sincere and heartfelt thank you.
And media was forever changed. Now, here's the question I want to throw out tonight. What would America be like without Rush, without talk radio, but without Rush on the air for the last 30 years? Without a doubt, he has now had a massive impact decade after decade, year in and year out. The doctor of democracy is the single most influential voice in the early 90s, holding the corrupt Clintons accountable, playing a vital role in the historic Republican midterm resurgence. Newt Gingrich coming to power in 1994. Now, he pushed for America's tough response after 3,000 of our fellow Americans were slaughtered on 9/11 2001. He was a leading voice for the Tea Party movement in 2010. He was one of the only people that were warning against Obama's radical left-wing ideology and agenda, rightly predicting that those policies would fail. And recently, he has been a steadfast, powerful voice for what is the working Trump agenda, the conservative agenda. And you see the dividends every day. Take a look.
Donald Trump is like anybody else would be. He won the presidency. He won the presidency against all odds. He resents deeply this idea that anybody helped him, particularly the Russians. You people in the media are nuts if you think Donald Trump is going to go along with this. That's not who he is.
There are Republicans and Democrats, but it's basically people who are pro-government, pro-Washington, who think government Washington's the center of the world. They'll give occasional mentions of these things that you mentioned, these policies, to placate voters. But going back to an original question you had here, they don't want Trump to succeed.
On today, the 30th anniversary of his syndication, well, he got a call from a pretty special surprise guest. Let's listen in.
Rush, I just wanted to congratulate you on 30 years. This is your favorite president, and I think you are fantastic. And I heard about it, and today is the big day, 30 years. I wanted to call personally and congratulate you.
I am floored. I thought there was nothing anybody could do to surprise me today. I've been preparing for anything. Mr. President,
you're a very special man, Rush, and you have people that love you. I'm one of them. But you're a very, very special guy. What you do for this country, people have no idea how important your voice is. So I just wanted to personally make this one, and I said I'll even dial the number myself if I have to. But I just want to congratulate you. 30 years in that tough business is incredible. And you're stronger now than ever before.
Well, I thank you so much. It's such a thrill to hear from you.
My friend Neil Bortz, also a talk show host, once referred to Rush as the Babe Ruth of talk radio. He was right. And during his call with Rush today, the president also brought up how often I call him the dean of talk radio. Watch this.
You know, people don't realize what a great achievement 30 years is, and that cutthroat business that you happen to be in. You know, you might not find that because you're so good at what you do, but it is a cutthroat business. And for you to do this for 30 years is truly an amazing accomplishment, and there's no voice like it. And even your friend Hannity agrees with that. He said, there's nobody like this man. So I said, oh, gee, I guess I thought you two would be competitive. He said, nope, he's the dean.
No way.
He called you the dean.
No way. It was a guest host. He guest hosted for me when we first started.
No, he's great, and he's a tremendous fan of yours. They all are. Everybody is. So I just want to congratulate you, 30 years of, and just do it for another 30 years. After that, you can take it easy, okay?
I will do that. I'll stay around as long as you do.
Okay, you have a deal.
That's a pretty good deal. But you know what? It is a competitive business, but people like myself, the great one, Mark Levin, Laura Ingraham, and most people that work in talk radio, we all understand that he forged a path for all of us. Here's the big question, though. I personally... You think back in the last 30 years, think about America today without Rush's voice, that booming conservative voice for 30 years, his unwavering commitment to conservative ideology, philosophy, frankly, his wonderful warm sense of humor, his outrageous humor, his steadfast love of country. He's literally given this country insightful commentary decade after decade, and it has changed the media landscape in this country forever as he led the way, forging a path like earlier pioneers like Jerry Williams and Barry Farber, Bob Grant, all these guys, some outrageous, controversial, some not. We get to do what we do today because he single-handedly opened up a whole new marketplace. He had the courage of his convictions. He paved the way for a new media and a political revolution. And the fact, for example, you're watching me right now is in part because of these great pioneers courageously forging that path. He had the audacity to stand up versus the status quo. He took a lot of heat. He stood for honest, conservative, great American values. They have tried again and again to take him down, and they take it just like they try to take Mark, Laura, me down whenever they can. But here we are. We're blessed, and we're better off as a country. The media has some diversity because of his life's work. So, Rush, on behalf of me, Mark, Laura, conservatives everywhere, millions of us, thank you. Congratulations. 30 great years of broadcast excellence.